way. If something seems literally unimaginable to you, it's very hard to be merciful toward that person. It's very hard to be forgiving. One has to be able, at least in some degree, to imagine how the world might look to that other person, to imagine what might have led him or her to do something, or say something, or act in a particular way that you find virtually unspeakable. But you can still show mercy to that person if you can imagine how it could, under certain circumstances, become a real possibility for you. One of the things that I found myself developing over the year are certain things that I now start referring to in my own mind as tests of moral maturity. There are little things I do with the undergrads to just find out where they are in their development. And actually what they are a series of statements, and I ask the students, can you tell me what that means? Explain that to me. And one of them is a statement from Montaigne, the great 16th century French essayist, who in his third and final volume of essays has an essay on pride. And like all of Montaigne's essays, frequently the title has little to do with the topic. He would get caught up in something and just write on. But he says in that essay, he gives an image that I find absolutely wonderful. And I say to the students, if you get this, you are morally mature. If you don't get it yet, live a little longer and see if it begins to make sense to you. And the statement is, Montaigne says, when I was younger, I used to judge people by what they did. Now I judge them by how much it has cost them not to have done worse. I think there are just incredible depths of wisdom in that statement. To think about what it could have cost someone, given the circumstances that he or she found themselves in, given their background, given their life to that point, what has it cost them not to have done worse than they did? Let's not concentrate on how bad they are, let's think of how much worse they could have been. That's what we need to concentrate on. And to do that, you have to be able to imagine yourself in that other person's position. So imagination is immensely important as a foundation for mercy, but the other quality that is so necessary is hope. Because you see, you can't show someone mercy if you're very, very frightened of what they may do to you. You can only show mercy if you have a certain amount of courage, a certain amount of willingness to take a risk on another human being. And that requires our having a sense of hope, of the possibility of change. Now, I'm going to cite a couple of poets as we go through this afternoon. I've cited Montaigne as an essayist already. Now let me talk about Dante. Dante is someone who got it all right. From beginning to end, he just got it. And you remember in the third canto of the Inferno, the first of the three great sections, the section on hell, you remember when Virgil was going to act as Dante's guide down through the circles of hell, up the levels of Mount Purgatory, that when Virgil leads Dante in the third canto of the Inferno to the gate of hell, what is carved over the doorway in his wonderful Italian, which I will now murder, lasciate ogni speranza voi che entrate. Leave all hope, you who enter here. What is the entrance to hell? The entrance to hell is hopelessness. The entrance to hell is despair. For Dante, and I think he's exactly correct on this, the root of all sin lies not in pride, not in disobedience, they're certainly not great goods, but they're not the root of all evil. The root of all evil is hopelessness, is an inability to believe in the goodness of one's own being, let alone in the goodness of any other being. If I can cite another great poet, this time a German one, Goethe, in his great verse play Faust, the story of the man who sells his soul to the devil to get, and in various versions of the legend, we get, yes, different motivations. Well, in Goethe's version, when Faust first summons up the demon, Mephistopheles, he asks the demon, "Who are you?" And the devil gives him two responses. Both are brilliant, but the first is, as Faust himself says in the play, is a riddle. The first response that the devil gives him is, "I am a part of that power that forever wills evil and forever does good." And Faust says, "That's a riddle. I don't want riddles. Tell me plainly who you are." And then the demon gives him what I think is the scariest description of evil that I know of. Now, as I always tell my students when I cite this to them, you're not going to feel the full impact of this, because here you are, surrounded by good people in a nicely lighted room on a beautiful Sunday. So you're not going to feel it. But if you some night wake up and can't get back to sleep, sit on the edge of your bed with the lights off and think about these words, and it'll scare you into the shrieking willies. What Mephistopheles says in response to Faust's insistence, "That's a riddle, tell me plainly who you are," is he says, "I am the spirit that says no, and rightly. All that exists comes to an end. Better there should never have been anything." What is it that marks evil? I am the spirit that says no. Do you remember the second letter of Peter in the New Testament? In Christ there is not yes and no, there is only yes. Well, in the demon there's only no. No to what? No to everything. Is there any value? No. Any hope for the future? No. Any possibility of improvement? No. Am I worth anything? No. Are you worth anything? No. Is the universe worth anything? No. It's all garbage. Because it all comes to an end. It's finite. It's not perfect. And if it's finite, if it's imperfect, better it shouldn't exist. This demon is not a demon of pride. This is not Milton's devil, Satan, in Paradise Lost, thundering out his defiance in heaven. Because we have to admit, in Milton, the devil gets all the best lines. And God the Father is a bit of a snooze, I always find. But what makes the demon is not that he loves, that he hates God. It's that he loves God too much the wrong way. He thinks that God is all that ought to exist. If you're not God, better you shouldn't be. If you're not perfect, you shouldn't exist at all. If it all comes to an end, better there should never have been anything. The demon doesn't love himself, he hates himself. He thinks you're junk and he thinks he's junk. And you see, if you think of yourself as junk, and if you think of others as garbage, that which shouldn't exist, well, then you can begin to treat them like junk. You begin to treat yourself like junk. You begin to treat the world like junk. There's no possibility of mercy because there's nothing to be worthy of mercy. It's all trash, including, of course, oneself. And the insistence throughout, it seems to me, the whole Jewish and Christian traditions is that what makes one live fully and richly is hope, the opposite of the despair, which is the entry to hell. And of course, you remember in Dante's version of hell, where is Satan? Satan is in the lowest pit of hell, not in flames, but locked in ice made from his own tears. He's a monster of despair. That's Dante's great, and I think exactly correct, image for evil. Locked in ice made from our own tears. We have to be people who can expect the possibility of growth, who can anticipate the possibility of renewal. Not because we are so good, but because God is so good. And on that basis, we can then be merciful to others because we know how much mercy is shown to us. That's what I want to suggest to you about mercy this afternoon, and hope. And to say something especially about hopefulness. Hope is a quality that's come to be more and more to me lately as I advance ever so gingerly into senior citizen status. And as the various parts of me give out and get replaced by artificial parts, I find myself more and more considering the question of hopelessness, because I consider the question of finiteness. There is a poem by T.S. Eliot that has come to mean an enormous amount to me in recent years, and I want to share it with you because I think it's the foundation of the hope that I'm talking about that enables us to be merciful. It's the end of the second of his 4 quartets, so late in his career as a poet. The second of the quartets is East Copa, and the end of it is these lines. Old men ought to be explorers. Here and there does not matter. We must be still, and still moving into a further dimension for another union, a deeper communion. Through the dark cold and the empty desolation, the wind cry, the wave cry, the vast waters of the petrel and the porpoise. In my end is my beginning. That image of getting older being an exploration is, I think, immensely important. It's what I must confess to you I was thinking of in relation to the homily at the Mass a little while ago, that it's precisely because we set out to explore. It's not a question of diminishment alone. It's not that I get tired more easily, I forget people's names, I get parts replaced. That's not the issue. The issue is, I've never been at this point in life before, and therefore I've got to find out what makes this part of life a way in which God can be met. I don't know what it's like to be 68. I've only become 68. Actually, I've been 68 since May. I'm now discovering what it means to be in my late 60s. Having not done it before, I've got things to learn. I've got to explore it. And the exploration may take me into some pretty dark places. That great image of the polar sea, the vast waters of the petrel and the porpoise. I may be out there with a lot of melting icebergs and nobody else. It may get lonely, it may get dark, it may get frightening, it may get cold, but I know what it's like to find God where it's welcome and warm and loving. Now I've got to find out where God is where it's cold and distant and remote. Because if God is everywhere, God's there too. God's at 68 as much as he was in 18 or 28 or 38. And I've got to discover that by becoming an explorer. Not by going to different places. It's not a matter of going here or there. We must be still and still moving, as Emerson says. We don't longer go out and wander, we drill down and discover the depth of things. It seems to me that that's the foundation of hope, is to take what is given to us as another possible exploration. I think of a wonderful lady who was next door neighbor to my family when I was growing up. And a long time ago now, Margaret died of cancer. And I remember speaking to her in her last weeks, and she said to me, I've known how to find God in happiness, now I've got to find him in pain. But you still have to find God. And God finds us. Sometimes with immediate joy, sometimes with great demands. But we've got to be able to confront those demands and explore them. Find out what they mean, and not what they take from us alone, but what they give to us by taking from us. I begin to think that diminishment is part of my vocation at this point in life, and therefore I've got to learn how to be diminished well. How to be diminished gracefully, how to be diminished joyfully, how to grow less, and I don't mean just by dieting, but how to grow less, and in growing less, discover something more about who Michael Himes is and what God expects from him. If we do that, then that becomes the foundation of hope. Remember that last slide of Eliot's great poem. In my end is my beginning. That by moving to the end, I'm not disappearing. I'm appearing in a different way and in a new relationship. I'm seeing myself in a way that I had never imagined myself. And therefore I can see other people in a way that I never imagined them. I can see why friends of mine, or acquaintances, or family members who grew old and it seemed to me unreasonable, cranky, no longer quite perceptive, were in fact doing, that lovely phrase that I quoted from Lord Acton before, were doing all that was humanly possible. And that the acceptance of all that was humanly possible is a great gift. It's something to be cherished. It's something to be embraced. And if one does that, then you can start every day with hope. You can hope that today I'm going to be bright enough, attentive enough, intelligent enough to notice where God is giving me something brand new. I'm noticing where something different and powerful is being given to me. And because of that, I can then be merciful to others. Because I don't have to be nervous about them. I don't have to be frightened of them. I don't have to worry about them. I don't have to be afraid of what they may do or how they may react. Because they're doing all that is humanly possible for them. And I don't know how much it costs them not to have done worse, as Montaigne says. And therefore, I can, with hope, embrace even people who would normally have driven me nuts. But I've gotten to the point, diminished that I am, that I can even see the goodness in people who would normally have driven me wild. I can see the point in people who have been critical or hurtful or indifferent, and I can embrace them and show them mercy by forgiving them. Not forgiving them because I speak from such wealth, but because I speak from such poverty. I've been diminished enough that I now know what it might be like to see the world the way they see it, to feel the world the way they feel it. And so out there on the boat on those vast waters of the Petrel and the Porpoise, it's possible to still have, to rejoice even in the loneliness, even in the darkness, even in the cold, and to be willing to share that with others, precisely because at one time it is all that is humanly possible. Thank you.